What is going on, everybody? We are live on Twitch, YouTube, and X for Hoop Drunk, Saturday, February 3rd. Hopefully, everybody can hear me this time because holy shit, that was very annoying. I recorded the whole first episode on Thursday, and apparently the audio didn't render or I was muted. Hard to say when you're the only one up here. That's kind of what you get. Welcome back for everyone who has listened in past years. This is year 3 now of Hoop Drunk. Super excited to be back. Already got 3 people in here on a Saturday morning, bright and fucking early. 149 games to go through. We're not going to go through all of them. I'll kind of go through. So it's going to be very simple in what we've done in the past. So a little bit of recap from the night before to start. I'm not going to blow myself because let's be honest, there wasn't a whole lot of action anyways. After we kind of recap the previous day, I want to get into 2 different segments. It's the Streaming 6. The Streaming 6 is going to be maybe not games that are going to be featured nationally. They're all going to be games that are available on ESPN Plus if you did want to do it. Yes, Natty, I'm open and I'm early and we're open for business. Let's get it cooking though. So we get the Streaming 6. That'll be ESPN Plus games. The next one, so I'm not going to have bets on all those, but I do want to get some data out there. Next, we're going to have the national televised games. So the national televised games, I'm not here to beat around the bush. People that are betting those games may not bet them for the right reasons, but hopefully this can provide a little bit of data for the guys that are just chasing the games that are on TV. After that, I am going to have some Steam reports during the week, and I'm also going to talk a little bit of NBA, but on Saturdays, we are going to kind of keep it tight because there is a lot of basketball to run through, but that'll be at the end of the show normally that we're going to talk a little bit of NBA. And like I said, the Steam report as well, that's going to be basically lines that are moving quickly. And it's not a surefire way to win bets. I say that very often, but chasing Steam is very interesting to me. But let's not really waste a whole lot of time. I've got 12 games that I really want to get in. I want to get out of here by 7 o'clock. I still got to go to work today. So that's awesome. Last night's recap, actually, before we get into that, for those of you that trailed the card, it was about as weird as it got. Horrible beat. Winthrop ends up winning by 6. We needed 6.5. However, we get the team total on Niagara, who I believe had 17 points with 2 minutes left in the first half. They end up going to overtime and hitting our team total. So we split going 1-1. Today, I've got already 5 games, I think 5 or 6 that I've already locked in. I'm going to go through 6 that are streaming on ESPN Plus, and then I've got another half dozen that are going to be our nationally televised game. For those of you that don't know, ESPN has a hell of a triple header tonight. That is going to be very, very fun to watch. But before we get into the games that everybody knows, let's talk about some games that maybe you don't know as much about, but there's definitely some good action to be had. We're going to start at noon in this one. We are going to get an 11 o'clock matchup in our televised games, but the Streaming 6 will start at noon. Cleveland State at Oakland. This thing opened with Cleveland State catching 5.5 on the road against the Golden Bears. It is now at 4.5. Total went from 120 or 147 rather up to 148. It's pretty funny how bad this matchup is on paper. The Vikings are outside the top 150 offensively, rebounding, defensively. They're outside the top 250. Golden Grizzlies, they're actually somehow worse offensively and defensively. This is Horizon League basketball, though. For those of you that know me, you know that I love the MAC. This is the MAC of college basketball. It's a lot of fun. The statistics aren't sexy. Green Bay is actually in the lead this year, so that's actually very fun for those of us locally. Looking at some trends in this one, Cleveland State 11-2 is the favorite. 2-7 is the dog straight up this season. They're around 500 against the spread. Really no home-away discrepancy to touch on. However, they failed to cover in 7 of their last 9 overall and 4 of their last 5 on the road. Oakland, on the other hand, 9-3 is the favorite. 6-2 is at home straight up. They've won 8 of their last 9 and 5 straight in their home building. Something I didn't know about Oakland, the OU Credit Arena. I kept seeing O apostrophe on the screen, and when you see O apostrophe and your last name is O'Kane, you get drawn to it. Interesting name for that building. Anyways, Oakland's won 8 of their last 9, 5 straight in the building. I would look to pair Oakland with a single-digit dog if you're going to do anything in this matchup. The line movement makes me a little bit concerned. Not terribly, only a point, but I don't love laying this number. They're a mediocre free throw shooting team, the Golden Grizzlies. So I don't feel confident enough to lay the number at 4.5. But like I said, if you're looking to pair that up, might be a good idea because I know you guys are absolute fiends with your parlays. Moving on to the next game. If you like offense, I've got a game for you. It's going to be Winthrop and UNC Asheville. That is a 1 o'clock tip on ESPN Plus. This thing is 1.5 in favor of Asheville. Total is 150 at the moment. An interesting one that I've been watching. And right now, I'm not showing a live line. And I don't know if this has been pulled off the board at all. Injury-wise, neither side really has any issues. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on that one. But personally, I kind of like the over. It's not a super prophetic type play. These teams combine for 160 points per game. They're top 100 in shooting. They average north of 70 possessions per game. So you know they're moving the basketball. Winthrop's gone over their total in 6 of their last 7. Asheville in 7 of their last 9. Also worth mentioning, the past 5 matchups between these two have cleared the total as well. Like I said, I'm checking the live line as of this morning. It's sitting at 150. And it's really right now an OddsShark only showing as an open. I do like the over if you can get it under 152. Get the over under 152. It sounds super weird, but I want to keep it somewhat around where the opening line was. I don't want to lose too much value on that one. But Winthrop, UNC Asheville are going to be, excuse me, a super, super entertaining matchup. For those that have not watched the Bulldogs are a fun mid-major team that you can definitely get behind. 2 fun mid-major teams that we get at 3:30. This is going to be a really fun matchup. Samford against the Chattanooga Mocs. This is actually going to be one of my first bets of the day. Why they buried this in the midday slate, I don't fully understand, but that seems to be what they do. 3 o'clock tips are 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. You're more or less just mid-majoring. Samford, terrific this year. This is going to be their toughest test so far. They're 19-3 on the season. The Mocs, they're currently a game back. With a win, they push Samford out of the top spot in the conference already in the Southern. I have a take that I feel good about, and it may hurt some people's feelings, but I think Samford is a little bit of a fraudulent team here. I get the record is sexy, but they're 16-0 as favorites. They're 1-3 as dogs. They're also just 4-4 on the road. And as for as crazy of an offensive team as they are, the under is 8-0 in those road games. So obviously the offense that they have, it does not travel. They've failed to cover in 4 of their last 5. For what it's worth, the Bulldogs have won once in McKenzie Arena in their last 13. The Mocs have absolutely owned this matchup of late. Looking at the Mocs, they're 9-2 at home this season. They've also won and covered in 5 straight. To me, this is Chattanooga all day. It's a team that we've bet in past years. They know how to win. They know how to win big games, especially at home. And like I said, Samford just not super, super grooving on the way that the Bulldogs play on the road. I locked this in last night at -1. This line currently is sitting -1.5 for Chattanooga. I would maybe suggest playing the short money line. I don't love their situation. They're not a great free throw shooting team. They rank 119th. They shoot just under 73%. So it's not something that I want to worry about at the end of the game as far as covering a number. So make sure that thing stays probably within 3. If you're going to take Chattanooga, anything outside of that, I may pass on it. But definitely a good one. That's a 1-unit play for me at Chattanooga -1. Next one, I don't have a ton on this game as they didn't have a lot of action. It was a late line release. Stephen F. Austin against Tarleton. It's a 4 o'clock tip at Wisdom Gym. It should be interesting. Vegas looks at this as a tight game. This thing opened SF Austin -1. It is still -1 with the total at 140.5. I think the total is probably accurate. We're looking at 2 teams here. The Texans are really good at home. They're 7-2 this season. They haven't been great covering the number. That's the one thing that I'm a little worried about. They're 2-4 against the spread at home. They've done well on neutral floors. This is not a neutral floor. Opponents coming into this game, Austin has failed to cover in their last 6. They are 7-3 straight up in their last 10, and overs have hit in 8 of their last 10. This is a game that I really couldn't get a read on. Again, it was a late line release, but I did want to be able to touch on it. Tarleton State's 4-1 against the spread in their last 5. The overs hit in 4 of their last 5. So if I'm going to lean anywhere in this game, I'm going to lean to the over. You got a couple of decent free throw shooting teams, but the problem that I run into is Tarleton's a sub 30% 3-point shooting team. They're 29.3, which we all know anytime you're underneath that 30%, things are pretty rough. And you're looking from a defensive standpoint, if you're looking at SF Austin, that's probably one thing that they do a little bit better than they do offensively. 63rd in opponent effective field goal percentage. To me, I would lean over, but this is going to end up being a no play, but still should be a really good matchup. Anytime you're getting a -1 spread or actually a +1 spread when the home team has a better record, you're usually going to get a pretty decent matchup. Moving right along in our streaming 6 to probably one that may not be the most entertaining game unless you like defense. If you like defense, you're going to love this. South Florida at North Texas. South Florida catching 7. Surprisingly, the Bulls currently in the top of the conference, and this thing opened at 6. It moved out to 7. So some good money on North Texas. We know the Mean Green. They are a defensive juggernaut. They're going to look to knock off the top team, and I think they've got a very good chance. Obviously, odds makers think so as well. The fact that they are currently laying 7. Obviously, UNT, known for good defense, one of the best squads in that conference, probably in the country. The Bulls, they rank outside the top 250 offensively on the road this season. Points may be really hard to come by in this one. Despite their shortcomings, they have covered and won 6 straight. These include wins against Temple, Wichita, and Memphis. So they've had some really good wins. North Texas has covered 6 of their last 9, but they're around 500 on the season against the number. To me, in this game, I get a little worried looking at a -7. Looking at 7 in a game where really, why? Why is it 7? It's a great question. UNT at home is really, really good. I don't feel confident enough to take the 7. I do somehow feel pretty decent, though, at under 130. I know that's just a disgusting number, and I would probably, I'm just looking to see road-wise. Yeah, I mean, the number makes sense. North Texas, man, they're at home. So when North Texas is at home and USF is on the road, North Texas allows less than 60 points per game at home. USF is under 70 points on the road. I know 130 is a really low number, but I would suggest keeping this thing under 130 if you can. This is going to be a really sloppy type game. I shouldn't say sloppy. These are 2 solid teams. It's just going to be very, very long, drag it out. Very fun, though. I think we're going to get a fun matchup in this one. And can North Texas get the win? You got to think that 7 points is going to be a very, very salivating number for a lot of folks that are looking at this game just on the surface. I would suggest maybe looking at the total. Let's talk our nightcap for the streaming 6. It is Eastern Washington catching 2.5 against Montana. This thing opened at Montana laying 1.5, so it has moved out a little bit. And this is also a game that I have action on. So Eastern comes in. They've covered 11 of their past 13 overall. They were on a 9-game winning streak before they fell to Montana State on Thursday. On the road, they've covered 7 of 8, 10-4 against the spread on the season. It's an offensively driven group. They average 78 points per game. The road splits do drop a little bit, but it is a solid resume. Montana, similar story. The Grizzlies come in 10-5 against the spread on the season. Or sorry, not on the season, the last 15 rather. And we're looking at the home splits. They're 9-2 at home on the season. Their home offensive numbers are impressive. They average 84 points per game. They slash 51, 38, 77, which is elite. I like Montana in this spot to win. Eastern is just not impressive. They're 6-8 on the road this season. Montana's 9-2 at home. It is an expensive money line. I got it for about -140, 150 is kind of out there right now. I've got 3/4 of a unit on it. Nice little play on Montana to win that game outright. Right now, looks like money line sitting right around 150. Open at 145, 150 to 160. So not everybody's cup of tea when you're getting that kind of juice. I don't put a lot of money on those plays, but it is something that I want a little bit of action on because I do like Montana in the spot. All right. That's going to wrap it up for some of our smaller matchups. Let's hop into our top TV matchups, and it's going to start in the Big East with one of the more classic matchups. We get UConn and St. John's. UConn currently laying 3. A little bit of a surprising opening line that has actually held true since open, with a total that has ticked up from 145.5 to 146. To me, it's an awesome day. And anytime you're going to open a day with MSG, UConn, and St. John's, that's awesome. The Huskies come in, they're running a 9-game win streak. Dan Hurley thinks this team's going to be right back in the Natty. Who's going to tell him he's wrong? They're better defensively than we saw a year ago, and it may not be a super popular opinion. They cleaned up some of the things that made me squirm, and why, honestly, I bet against them a lot last year. Turnovers, sharing the ball, rebounding. They got better across the board in all three categories. I understand it's going to be an insane atmosphere, but I look at this as more, and it's very unfair to St. John's to say this. I look at this as a neutral game. I don't think St. John's actually holds that much home court advantage, especially when you play at MSG. And looking at UConn, they're 4-0 against the spread, and they're 4-0 outright in neutral site games. This is a team that I don't think is going to fade out in this spot at all. Looking at the Red Storm, they've lost 4 of their past 5. They've also lost 3 of their last 4 by double digits. This group's nothing special offensively or defensively. They're outside the top 100 in almost every single notable category. They rebound well, 3rd defensively, but UConn's the number 1 defensive rebounding team in the country. I could see St. John's keeping this somewhat tight. Obviously, the spread suggests it, and you got to respect that number. However, I like UConn. I've got, so I already bet it minus 150 for a unit and a half, and I do have another unit and a half actually pending on Bet Openly at 138. I'm looking to see, so right now it's a unit and a half play. It could be as high as 3 units. I really like UConn. I don't think they're going to shy away in this matchup against a St. John's team that is kind of reeling at this point. It's kind of disappointing to see how they've unraveled, but that's college basketball for you. Let's talk about the next one, which is probably going to be the matchup of the day, I would say. Houston, Kansas. It's a 3:00 tip at Allen Fieldhouse. This is going to be interesting. So the reason I say it's interesting is this thing opened at Houston laying 2.5. It has now tightened to Houston laying 1. We talk about steam reports. That is a steam move. And in Kansas right now, getting a lot of the favor. When we talk Cougars, you obviously have to mention their defense. They hold teams to 52 points per game. They shoot 35, 28, 63 against them. That's unbelievable. That defense is absolutely unbelievable. This team's usually one where you blindly bet the under, and if you've done that, you're profitable. You're 67% on the season. Looking at Kansas, we see a typical balance that we normally have seen on both sides of the ball, that we've seen in the past. What worries me a little is the team's just 4-3 in their last 7. They're banged up, and even if their guys all go today, looking back at it, Iowa State's a forgivable loss, but UCF and West Virginia, I don't like that. Houston, they've rolled in 5 straight after back-to-back losses. They also lost to Iowa State. They've also, though, held 3 of those opponents to under 60 points, or 62 points, rather. So, to me, this Houston team is they're just like teams of past. I don't have a play in this one. I lean Houston for a lot of what I just said. I don't see a scenario where they lose a game that isn't within a few points. But I could see Houston blowing out Kansas. It's not a game where I feel great. I could see Kansas getting rolled by a dozen. I don't think anybody would really bat an eye. I think this would be kind of one of those games that, oh yeah, Houston won big against. So yes, ugly line movement. I'm going to stay away from this one, but I do lean Houston. Moving along, Duke, North Carolina. The matchup is back. This matchup kind of lost the flair over the last few years. Rivalry's as good as we've seen it now. We get some star power on both sides. Duke comes in winning 11 of their past 12. UNC just handed their first conference loss to Georgia Tech. I 100% understand the number in this situation, and we're looking at it right now. UNC laying 4 and as much as 4.5, as I'll talk about in just a minute. Over the total in this one, 153.5, has ticked all the way down to 151. So expecting some defense here. The Tar Heels, they've covered 9 of their past 11. They're 14-4 against the spread in their past 18 Saturday home games. That's obviously a wide number of games. However, it's a really tough place to play. For as well as Duke plays, they've struggled to beat the line. They're around 500 against the spread this season. Both offenses, I expect to score the basketball, and we kind of know this. It's going to come down to who can get the stops, and I'm a little worried about North Carolina's home ability to do so. Their splits make absolutely no sense. Let's take a look at it. Overall, they're 20th in opponent field goal percentage and 15th in three-point. However, they dropped to 105 and 229 at home. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And on the flip side, Duke's defensive numbers only get better on the road. They allow just 66 points per game, allow 43, 31, 66 from the field. We also see Duke favored in the rebounding aspect. They go from 32nd, they are 32nd overall. They're 28th on the offensive glass. I think this line's a little wide, and I actually was able to get it at +4.5 at plus 115 this morning. That's a really good line, in my opinion, if you can get it outside of 4. But I still do like it +4. You can get Duke money line right around plus 150 if you wanted to do it. But to me, I think getting those points is probably enough to make most people pull the trigger. It'll be interesting to see how this line moves throughout the day because it is only 7 o'clock in the morning, so we still have a lot of time remaining. Let's talk about 3 more games before we get out of here. First one, Iowa State Cyclones on the road facing the Baylor Bears. This should be an interesting one. Opened at 3.5, stayed at 3.5, ticked down from 144 to 143. Interesting game. If the Bears don't come into this one ready, they could walk away super disappointed. We just talked about ISU. ISU's impressed. They beat Kansas, TCU, and Houston already in conference. However, are those superpowers transferable to the road? Because let's get into it. Their offense ranks top 50 nationally overall, and their defense, you could argue, is top 25. When you look at the splits, they become the 331st three-point shooting team, 341 in free throw percentage, and their shot volume plummets on the road. Defensively, they go from 6th in scoring to 61 points per game, all the way down to 113th. They allow 73 on the road, so a 12-point swing. Even worse, their 27th ranked opponent field goal percentage drops to 205th. We're looking at a Baylor offense that cooks at home. They get 85 points per game, shoot 49, 40, 72. That's overall. At home, it goes 90 points per game, 52, 41, 73 splits. So you have to mention Baylor's one of the best in the nation on the glass. They're second in defensive rebounding, 10th overall. And the Bears weathered the storm. They lost 3 straight, got back in the win column against UCF. I think I know my angle on this one is going to be Baylor team total over 72.5. I put a unit and a quarter on it, so it's going to be my second biggest bet of the day. They've covered this number in 14 of 16 home games this season. I do think they're going to come out and get some good offensive looks against Iowa State. Iowa State's great, but on the road, man, they just don't make a whole lot of sense. Second to last one. Kentucky. This is going to be a great game. Kentucky and Tennessee is a 7:30 tip on ESPN. Star-studded left and right. Obviously, Dalton Knecht, one of the more exciting players to watch in the country, averaging just under 20 points per game. The Volunteers need to bounce back. They had a really ugly loss as 14-point favorites to South Carolina. UK is kind of in the same boat. They also lost to SC last week, and they lost to Florida this week. So let's kind of dive in. The Wildcats play one way, and that's fast. They're 5th in pace. They average north of 90 points per game at home, /52-71 or 52-41 and 76. Tennessee's defense is top 20, but maybe top 15. But we see this same kind of road discrepancy in the splits. It's not as dramatic as ISU, but they're about a 15 to 25% worse on the road versus what they are overall. So it's probably about a 30% swing when they're at home versus on the road. If they want to keep this game close, they got to keep pace. The Wildcats are going to run. On the road, the team does just fine scoring the basketball. Their three-point percentage is the only large drop-off, and their shooting from distance isn't all that good to begin with. When I'm talking about Tennessee, they'll get the majority of the baskets in the paint. Tennessee is kind of that slashing athletic. They've got tall scorers. Trey Mitchell is a good center. He's going to have his hands full against a really, really active team. All in all, though, I do like Kentucky in this spot. They've had the ability to keep the pressure offensively this game. In this home court offense hits like crack in the 80s. I mean, they score so much, and they play so different at home. I'm rolling with Kentucky. They're plus 100, plus 105 right now. I've got a half unit on it. This thing opened at Tennessee laying 1. It's out to 1.5. Total is ticked down just a little bit, but it's a game that I do like Kentucky in. So I'm going to be rolling with the Wildcats. I got a half unit right around even money. Our last one, our nightcap, the Gales. The Gales are going to the Gonzaga Bulldogs. It's a 9:30 tip. It'll be the end of that ESPN trifecta that we're getting later in the day. Another great nightcap. Some early money on the Gales. Gales opened this up catching 5. They're now catching 4 and probably catching closer to 3.5, judging by the way that the line looks. The Zags, they've declined a little bit from being the national, juggernaut. They do sit technically behind St. Mary's in conference right now. I don't know how much I read into that. They've only got 1 loss. St. Mary's has none. However, they've now won 7 of their past 8 and 16 of their last 17 at home, dating back to last season. St. Mary's hasn't had a lot of luck, losing 10 of their past 12 in this matchup, but they have to feel a little bit more optimistic, knowing that Gonzaga is not Gonzaga of the past. And with a defense like St. Mary's has, you're going to be in every game. Not to mention, nobody hits the glass better on the road in the country. Now, this is not going to be easy. Gonzaga is still the offensive juggernaut that we had in previous seasons. You can't ignore the first month of the season where the Gales were almost non-existent. They were kind of a dumpster fire. They started 3-5, but have really kind of come around. I don't have a lean in this one. I would lean to the over. It sits at right around 140. It's actually ticked down to 139, it looks like. Up from 138 at open. So that is that's a good look. I'm going to take a look at that. That's a late start, maybe an over that you could chase late in the night if you're out at the bars or anything like that. But it's going to be a great game. Anytime you get Gonzaga and St. Mary's, it's going to be solid. Now looking at our Sunday slate, because we do have to talk a little bit about that as we are wrapping up our Saturday stuff. Looking at Sunday, we're going to get some interesting matchups, and it's going to start in Madison. Purdue and Wisconsin, a noon tip, number 2 versus number 6. Wisconsin coming off of a 19-point collapse against Nebraska. It was very, very ugly. I don't love the Badgers in this spot. Tickets are over $100 to get into this rig. That's interesting. But really, outside of that game, you do get Nebraska and Illinois later on in the day. Providence and Villanova will be always interesting. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting day of games. My Milwaukee Panthers get a game at 2:00, and we do see UNC Greensboro at Furman. I will have some action on these games. It's just going to be a little bit delayed. I won't have an episode until earlier next week. But before we get out of here, let's just run through the card because I want to be able to make that clear. So starting off at 11 a.m., we're going to get UConn outright, minus 150. Like I said, I could end up getting 3 units on that. Chattanooga laying 1 at 3:30. We've got Duke plus 4.5 at 5:30 against UNC. Baylor over 72.5 team total against ISU at 7:00. That's a unit and a quarter. Kentucky plus 105 for a half unit at 7:30, and then Montana 3/4 of a unit minus 140 at 8:00. Those are my plays for right now. Those are going to change. I'm going to obviously add some more as we get further along in the day, but that's it for right now. Keeping this thing under 30 minutes is kind of what I've been trying to do, and we have done it. It's 7:01. Your boys got to get to work. Hopefully you guys have a lovely Saturday. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Have a good one.